Welcome everybody to episode number 3 of the First Strike Podcast. I am your host and I go by the Marathon Don. So here in the First Strike Podcast, we strike first, we talk later. This week was a relatively quiet week in the world of combat sports. There were some news, so let's talk about it. The first thing I want to talk about is Logan Paul, the rumored matchup, Logan Paul versus Conor McGregor. So apparently earlier this week, for the first time ever, Conor McGregor crossed paths with the Paul brothers. And it happened at the inauguration. So apparently there was some sort of bus and Jake Paul is there and Logan Paul is there. And they happened to just literally be in the same bus as Conor McGregor. It created a very funny viral moment. And it also shed light on the rumored matchup between Logan Paul and Conor McGregor in boxing. So this will be a boxing match. And my understanding is the weight class of 190, 195. That's what Conor McGregor said in the video. And I really don't want to see it. I don't want to see it at all. You know, I think Logan Paul is way too big, and this version of Conor McGregor is a megastar. You know, he tracks attention everywhere he goes, and I really don't want to see him face off against someone so big with the possibility of potentially losing that fight. You know, I'd rather see Conor McGregor come back home, come back to MMA. You know, I don't like to see it. I saw Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather. I didn't like that matchup at all. Floyd Mayweather's punches barely had any effect on Logan Paul. He was just way too big, and he was just, you know, lumbering all over the ring. It was a very sloppy boxing match. And the funny thing is that if Conor McGregor was to fight one of the Paul brothers, I actually rather see him fight Jake Paul. There's way more heat with that matchup, even though Jake Paul is also way too big. You know, at his peak, Conor McGregor was the 155-pound champion in the UFC, as well as the 145-pound champion. Both Paul brothers, these guys, they walk around over 200 pounds. You know, recently Jake Paul fought Mike Tyson at heavyweight. So to see him fight a former featherweight, lightweight champion in Conor McGregor, even now, Conor McGregor, I would say he's maybe walking around 185 pounds. I don't really want to see that matchup. I'd rather see Conor McGregor, if he's going to fight again, come back home, come back to MMA. I think a great matchup for someone like Conor McGregor would be Dan Hooker. All action, all striking, and this is someone that is a top 5 lightweight, and we know for a fact is not going to grapple with Conor McGregor. He's going to go there, stand and bang, and give the fans what they want to see. And who doesn't want to see that matchup? Just imagine the violence taking place in that matchup, the action. Dan Hooker, Conor McGregor, Dan Hooker. What a matchup. I'd rather see that than Conor McGregor versus Logan Paul any day. Logan Paul, he has developed such an amazing career in WWE. I'd rather see Logan Paul continue to venture in WWE. You know, Royal Rumble's right around the corner, WrestleMania. I don't see how a high-profile boxing match, you know, fits into his future. I don't really think it's going to benefit him much. He's already super famous. I don't think there's a need for this type of fight. It might come off as a little gimmicky. And once again, I referenced the Floyd Mayweather-Logan Paul fight. I saw the matchup. I didn't like it when it was announced. I didn't like it when I saw the fight, and it's just too much of a weight difference. There's weight classes for a difference. So please, folks, let's follow these weight classes, right? Let's stick to the weight classes. This week, there was also a big event in Philadelphia. Big shout out to Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. They had a big event with Eddie Alvarez versus Jeremy Little Heathen Stevens headlining the event. And I love to see how Conor McGregor, with his shareholder position. So for those that don't know, Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship is a promotion where it's bare knuckle boxing. So they box rounds with no gloves. It's bare knuckles. And last year, I believe it was last year, Conor McGregor, he acquired a shareholder position and he purchased equity in the company. So now he's kind of like a spokesperson for the company. So it's really cool seeing Conor McGregor at all the press conferences, all the promotional events this week leading up to the pay-per-view last night in Philadelphia. And honestly, I've never seen Conor McGregor in an atmosphere that he looked like he was just in his element. Violence, liquor, you know, just so much energy in that environment. He looked so happy to be there, and I felt like it's just two worlds complementing each other. And I really think he's bringing a whole level of notoriety and attention to the promotion. So I think it's a win-win for both. Do I want to see Conor McGregor get in the ring in bare knuckle boxing? Absolutely not. I think the value for him is as a spokesperson because he has become such a larger than life character. He always has. Like he's always been, someone that knows how to talk. When he first started his career, he would talk the talk and walk the walk and back it up with that vicious, that vicious left hand. But at this point in his career, he reminds me a little bit of The Rock, where every time you see him, it's almost like he's on gimmick. He's in character, and he's never breaking character, and he's living the life, right? It's almost like the movie that he was in, and I feel like in bare knuckle boxing, he's in his element, right? You see him, he's shouting, he's screaming, he's showing up late, he's cursing, and I think that this promotion literally compliments Conor McGregor, same way Conor McGregor compliments him, and it's a perfect marriage, and it's a perfect timing because it brought so much attention to the event last night, which was a phenomenal matchup. So if you haven't seen him, make sure you check out Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. Big shout out to Jeremy Stephens getting it done in the main event against Eddie Alvarez. And at this point, even in the UFC, to me, Eddie Alvarez was never someone that was known that much for his boxing. Like, yeah, he had decent boxing, but it was also his wrestling ability and his ability to mix the martial arts that made him the lightweight champion. It wasn't just, he wasn't knocking everybody out. He was more of a, he was really like I don't want to say a brawler, but he was someone that really meshed well with all the styles. Someone like Jeremy Stephens, on the other hand, like this guy was known as a feared KO artist in 145. So I kind of felt like Jeremy Stephens would really do well in bare knuckle boxing, and he is. But it was a very competitive matchup. I think that Eddie Alvarez came out as a star, and it was a great homecoming. And I love the promotion leading up to the event where they celebrate him as a hometown hero. So it was really, really cool to see that. I haven't really seen fighters be treated like that or promoted like that, when they fight in their hometown. So it was really cool to see him be celebrated in that way and format. Also, big shout out to Ben Rothwell, former UFC heavyweight champion, who had a big win last night as well as bare knuckle fighting. And Ben Rothwell, he was always someone that had a chin. Like he could really dish out the punishment but absorb it as well. So I love seeing these type of new sports and promotions have success because it just creates opportunities for more fighters. Speaking of new promotions, there's a lot of things going on with across the MMA culture with a new league called Global Fighting. I believe it's GFL, Global Fighting League. And so correct me if I'm wrong, don't quote me. But so GFL, they had their inaugural drafts this past week, and my understanding is they're going to have a team-based format, and they drafted so many former MMA champions, UFC fighters, personalities such as Dylan Dennis. I saw Tony Ferguson was drafted, and my understanding is there's going to be several regions and several teams per region, and then they're going to compete in a tournament-style, point-style system. So, this is a new promotion. Big shout-out to GFL, and I love seeing it. I love to see these big promotions creating opportunities for all the fighters, because the more promotions there are, the more opportunities there are for these fighters to get paid, to get fights, to get intriguing matchups for the fans. PFL also had a big event. Shout out Usman Nurmagomedov, who defended his title in the main event. So there was a little bit of action this week in the world of MMA. But shifting over a little bit to boxing, Inoue had a big victory, and he defended his 122-pound undisputed championship with a brutal, vicious knockout. And there's a little bit of a rumor about him possibly moving up in weight. He's been undisputed champion for a while, possibly moving up in weight to fight Gervonta Davis. Gervonta Davis already has his next fight booked, so I don't really think there's too much talks of that fight happening. But if it does, you already know that we're definitely going to be here to see it. So overall, it was a quiet week, but there was still some notable news. Other than that, one thing that I do want to talk about and give a big shout out to WWE. They recently hosted their Saturday night main event as we build towards the Royal Rumble. And, Jey Uso fought for the World Heavyweight Championship. He didn't win the title, but I love to see what they're doing with all these characters and really building them up the right way. Will he dethrone the champion at WrestleMania? You got to tune in to find out. So make sure you check them out, because they have a lot of momentum going on building to the Royal Rumble. I'll definitely be tuning into the Royal Rumble, so make sure you tune in as well. For the Royal Rumble, my prediction, I would say would be John Cena. I'm gonna go with John Cena. Like I mentioned before in my previous episode, I think this is gonna be his last. I mean, he announced it. It is his last run, and I think this is gonna be a moment where they really propel him towards the record-breaking 17th title reign. And who doesn't want to see that? I would definitely love to see that. So I'll be tuning into a Royal Rumble to see what swerves and surprises the WWE throws upon us. Besides that, one thing that I do want to talk about, I was reading a lot about MMA recently, especially with the aftermath of UFC 311, and I was thinking to myself, what is the best martial art to be a successful MMA fighter? The best martial art to be a successful MMA fighter. And when I think about the martial arts and what is the most dominant, I have to highlight wrestling. I think wrestling and wrestlers overall is one of the toughest sports. It really breaks you and builds you back up. And when I think of the most important martial art to learn and know as a mixed martial artist, would be wrestling. Wrestling has the ability to dictate the pace, control where the match takes place, and you can overpower other styles. For example, if someone is a boxer and they go up against a kickboxer, there's going to be a clash of styles, and unless the kickboxer lands a kick early, it could really be competitive. You're both going to start standing, you both have the ability to strike, to block strikes. However, if a wrestler goes up against a boxer, immediately the boxer is going to have a challenge defending that takedown if it's a high-level wrestler. If a wrestler goes against a kickboxer, same thing. If a wrestler goes against a BJJ practitioner, it's going to be the same thing. A BJJ practitioner has the ability to tackle on submissions, but it's very hard to stop that takedown. The fights start standing. And I think that having wrestling as a base, it just really dominates every other art. The only art that I think that it's competitive to it a little bit would be maybe judo or sambo, but I just think that wrestling, the type of drills they do, the type of cardios, the scrambles, starting like lowering your center base of gravity, is just so dynamic and so explosive. Like, these guys are going 100 miles per hour. So until you are in a scramble with a wrestler and you feel your heart rate shooting up and your cardio going out the window, you're not gonna know what it's like. You could have someone that is well-rounded, and you have a wrestler become champion just by his wrestling background and developing a overhand right. We've seen it so many times. Folks like Tyron Woodley, he was a very successful wrestler with a overhand right. George St. Pierre, Matt Hughes, and the list goes on and on of all these great wrestlers. Especially now with the Dagestanians, with Habib and his camp, and using wrestling as a base. And when I really think about it, I don't think that there's any other martial art that is as important to the sport of MMA as wrestling. If you're a really, really, really good wrestler, you're in a better position to dominate other mixed martial artists that are really good at other arts. If you take a really good boxer with limited wrestling and you put him against a really good wrestler with limited boxing, the wrestler is going to win. He's going to win. As soon as the fight starts, he's going to take the takedown, and the other guy's not going to be able to utilize his striking. Simple as that. You take a really, really good jiu-jitsu black belt against a high-level wrestling, the wrestler could blow right through him and control him. Where the BJJ practitioner, maybe he lashes on submission, maybe he has the ability, but that initial takedown, that initial sequence, the wrestler is going to dictate where the fight takes place. On the flip side, he could keep the fight standing, right? And the BJJ practitioner, there's no way that he's going to be able to take down a high-level wrestler. So we've seen that before. So for anyone looking to get into MMA, I definitely recommend start working on your wrestling. I think wrestling is one of the fundamental arts, and if not the most important art